Stats that I will be covering are for the months of October, November, and December of 2022. I will be conducting a full year's briefing covering all of 2022 later this month once all the numbers are officially compiled. One of the things I have repeatedly expressed is my desire to make Raleigh the safest city in the nation. I am hopeful that one of the ways we can work to accomplish this is by being transparent and providing the relevant information to the public that we can. I firmly believe if the community is aware of the crime challenges that we are facing, then we can all work collaboratively for a targeted response to reduce it. This is one of the reasons that I hold this briefing. While we did see some challenges in the fourth quarter of 2022, we also saw many successes that were a direct result of some shifts that we made in personnel, as well as the formation of several special enforcement teams. And we formed those teams to focus on areas where we have experienced repeated violence and quality of life concerns. Looking at the various crime categories that you have before you, I will start with homicides. In the fourth quarter, we saw a 50% increase in homicides compared to the fourth quarter of 2021. There were a total of 9 incidents for the quarter. There was, of course, the Hedingham mass shooting, which left 5 people dead and another 2 individuals injured. Of the 9 total cases, suspects were identified in 7 of them, yielding a 78% clearance rate, which is excellent. In 67% of the cases, the suspect and the victim were known to each other in some capacity, opposed to being random acts of violence. I'm happy to report that none of the homicides for the fourth quarter occurred at nightclub or sweepstakes locations. If you can recall, back in 2021, upon arriving in Raleigh, I made it a focus for us to concentrate on shootings and murders that were occurring at nightclubs after we experienced 4 murders alone in the third quarter of 2021. As a department, we have been very intentional in meeting with club owners and encouraging them to hire extra security, as well as having our officers conduct directed patrols around our nightclubs to reduce the likelihood of violence. Those efforts have proven successful, and we will continue in this new year. Looking at robberies, in the fourth quarter, we achieved a 25% reduction in personal robberies. There were 92 compared to 122 in 2021. The 92 is less than was reported in both the fourth quarters for 2020 and 2021. With respect to robbery from business locations, there was 1 more than the previous year, so 26 versus 25. We are always working with our businesses to target harden their locations to prevent robberies. One area that I'm very pleased to see a reduction in for the quarter is in our aggravated assaults and our assaults involving firearms. Removing dangerous weapons from our streets and out of the hands of offenders has been a priority not only for the Raleigh Police Department, but the entire law enforcement community across the nation. Of the 115 reported aggravated assaults for the quarter, 43% involved a firearm, which again reaffirms the need to remove these weapons from out of the hands of those committing crimes. It is important that I remind every lawful gun owner to secure your firearms. I cannot stress it enough. Please do not leave firearms in your vehicles, not even for a moment. Even in your trunk, please don't do it. At last count, in 2022, there were 386 firearms stolen from vehicles in Raleigh, which is a 25% increase from 2021. Speaking of firearms, a disturbing trend we have noticed not only in the fourth quarter of 2022, but throughout the year is the accessibility of firearms by juveniles. 11% of the aggravated assaults in the fourth quarter were committed by juveniles who had access to guns. The Raleigh Police Department is partnering with the North Carolina Division of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention on a statewide safe storage project that will involve an extensive education campaign and distribution of gun locks in an effort to keep those firearms secure and out of the hands of our children. Members of RPD are a part of this focus group on this project. I will continue to stress that we must devote every and all resources available to prevent youth violence. I'm asking community groups and nonprofits that may be listening to this crime briefing to considering partnering with RPD, if you are not already, to provide gun awareness and anger management training for our youth. We are seeing a greater need for this every day. Turning to property crimes, I want to highlight vehicle thefts because we continue to see this type of crime occur. There was an uptick of 12% in the number of cars reported stolen for the quarter, 325 versus 298. These thefts were fairly distributed throughout the city, as we have seen in the past. It is a reminder to all of us that there is no part of the city that is exempt from car thefts, nor cars being broken into. While 325 cars were stolen in Raleigh in the fourth quarter, a total of 465 vehicles were recovered. This number includes vehicles stolen in our jurisdiction as well as cars stolen outside of Raleigh. I really cannot say it enough, especially during the winter months. Please do not leave unattended vehicles running, not even for a few moments. And please do not leave spare keys and fobs in your vehicle. One area that I like to speak on today that I don't typically include in my crime briefings is traffic fatalities. In 2022, we experienced a disturbing increase in the number of fatalities. In the fourth quarter, there were 19. 12 of these were pedestrians being struck. The top 3 locations of these fatalities were the 43 to the 4700 block of Capitol Boulevard, the 4400 to the 4700 block of New Bern Avenue, and the 2300 to 2500 block of South Saunders Street. Contributing factors to the fatalities were impairment as well as excessive speeding, and quite frankly, just the mere fact that we have more drivers on our roadways than we had even pre-pandemic has contributed to these fatalities. Our department is working very closely with City DOT for traffic calming efforts, as well as many of our law enforcement partners in the region to slow drivers down. Colonel Johnson and I, in fact, talked quite a bit about this. In the fourth quarter, there were some of our efforts that we employed to try to reduce the number of fatalities or just speeding in general was our traffic enforcement unit partnered with the Highway Patrol for speed enforcement along I-440 and Lake Wheeler Road. This was back in October and November, and this effort resulted in 146 speeding violations. Also on November 25th, the Traffic Enforcement Unit concentrated their efforts along the 4000 block of Six Forks Road due to excessive speeding. And in December, we conducted a saturation patrol along Capitol Boulevard and Glenwood Avenue, which resulted in numerous DWI arrests, several pre-arranged speeding competition arrests, and the seizure of 5 vehicles. Like violent crime, speed enforcement is a top priority for me, and we will continue to aggressively address this problem. I am thankful to the Governor's Highway Safety Commission for the grant funding to continue devoting officers to the important work of slowing drivers down. I'm also grateful to the many partners we have in this region who, whenever we reach out to them and ask for their participation in saturation patrols, they gladly respond and assist us. One other area I'd like to touch on in this crime briefing is Glenwood South, as I know it is a concern to many. In the fourth quarter, we continued our presence of officers mainly on Friday and Saturday nights in this area. They worked in conjunction with our hospitality unit, who is always working along the corridor. Our goal in the area has always been to promote vibrancy while ensuring safety. For the fourth quarter, we had 9 reported aggravated assaults and 22 simple assaults, and 22 firearms were confiscated from the Glenwood South area. As our city and our region continues to grow, we are not naive to think that we won't see increases in various crime categories. It is part of the growing pains of being a major metropolitan city. But I want to assure you that the Raleigh Police Department is and will continue to devote every resource we can to preventing and reducing crime. As part of our crime strategy, we will continue to focus our efforts on locations where we are seeing repeated incidents, such as the 1600 block of New Bern Avenue, where there were 2 homicides in 2022, one of them being in the fourth quarter, and also 2 multiple shootings, as well as drug activity and quality of life concerns. The community has demanded that we give attention to this area, and we are doing exactly that, and we'll do that to prevent further victimization. We will also continue our focus on repeat offenders who are committing violent crime. We know who they are, and we are working with the DA's office as well as the U.S. Attorney's Office on state and federal charges that carry substantive penalties. Additionally, we will continue working with our law enforcement other law enforcement agencies such as the sheriff with Wake County Sheriff's Office and Highway Patrol for speed enforcement and saturation patrols to reduce the number of impaired drivers as well as aggressive drivers. And when we are able to seize vehicles for such things as prearranged racing or fleeing to elude arrest, we will do so for the safety of everyone involved. Finally, we are always committed to working alongside the community to prevent crime. Our officers have increased their walking patrols for greater interaction with the public, mostly in the downtown area. Just last week, we had our inaugural Walk with a Cop event at Pullen Park. Events like this certainly create opportunities for the community to come out and hang out with our officers and learn ways that they can contribute to preventing crime in their neighborhoods. As always, we welcome the public's cooperation in reporting information related to criminal behavior. You can call our Raleigh Crime Stoppers anonymously at 919-996-1193, or you can leave a tip by visiting our Crime Stoppers website. Cash payouts are available if your tip leads to an arrest. Again, thank you for joining us today. I will now open it up to questions that you may have of me and my staff pertaining to the fourth quarter.
Speaking of available resources, what are staffing levels looking like, and are there any plans to try to increase them moving forward?
Yeah, absolutely. So we continue to work on staffing. That's always a challenge for us as a department. But we are aggressive in our hiring that we are doing. We currently have a large academy class in place. We have another class that's starting in January, and we'll have another large class in July. So we will continue to do that. Certainly at some point, we have to really consider our overall numbers and our population growth to see if we've got to increase our police department.
You mentioned those special enforcement teams, in areas of quality of life concerns, high volumes of violence. I know you mentioned New Bern Avenue is a block you're focusing on. What else are these special enforcement teams doing? Can you give us examples of how what they're doing is different from somebody not on the team?
Right, so we are putting them strategically in different areas of the city. Anytime, mainly when I get a complaint of something occurring, could be crime related, could be speed, traffic related, we will concentrate our efforts with that, but also to our traditional areas where we tend to see crime. So along Pool Road, New Bern, as we've stated, also to Glenwood South, and they're doing a lot of different things. Traffic enforcement, they're doing undercover operations and such. Some of our officers too on the team, Capitol Boulevard, they've really been concentrating with the fatalities that we have seen there, but also to the criminal kind of behaviors that we're seeing along that corridor.
Chief, in respect to the staffing and recruitment, how many vacancies do you have right now? I know in the past we've reported around 100. I know you've had several recruitment classes, people retire, et cetera. What number are you working with now?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a fluid number. It changes really literally every day as we are hiring people or we have individuals retiring or leaving the organization. We are sitting right now at 115 vacancies.
And then just to loop around to what you ended with as far as help from the community, I know in the last briefing you mentioned that you were seeing increased numbers of tips to your tip line and that kind of thing. Do you have any anecdotal evidence or hard numbers to show that that has continued throughout the rest of this year? Are more people cooperating and helping you with investigations, or is that still a problem area?
So I don't have the numbers, the hard numbers to share with you today. I will tell you that we have done, I think actually 2 campaigns where we have really pushed to get some information, one of a fatality that occurred on Glenwood. And we've been getting the tips in. We always encourage more. Any information that anybody has that could be helpful, even if you don't think it could be helpful, I think it can be helpful. And we do encourage individuals just to call and report that.
We're ending the year, with record homicide numbers for the city of Raleigh, almost 50 deaths. What does that tell you about where we are right now as far as violent crime goes in Raleigh? And what are you doing to address, 49 homicides and making that number lower?
Sure. Again, I think it goes back to what we are seeing. We are a growing city. Our population is growing. Many people are moving to this area. And as I've stated in my briefing, I think it's naive to think that you're not going to have a criminal element that is a part of that growth. We will continue to do the things we're doing, focusing on problem locations, problem individuals, and trying to mitigate that as much as we can with the resources that we have. One of the biggest things I think we can do, though, as a police department is to partner, one, with the community, and secondly, with our partners. Always reaching out to the U.S. Attorney's Office. The relationship there is solid. Mr. Easley is always communicating with me on those more severe charges, so when an individual creates a crime or commits a crime, we're able to take swift action on it.
Chief, what can we expect in 2023 with the Community Violence Interrupter Program with the Raleigh Apex NAACP? I know that there's been funding already approved and everything for it, but I want to know what we can expect to get going with the program this year.
Sure. When we do our briefing later this month, there will be more conversation about that. The CVI program is working towards being up and running. I think that Gerald Givens, the president of the NAACP, spoke about that just the other day in an interview that he did, where he's looking by the summer to have some boots on the ground. Those will be individuals, community members, who will be interacting very directly with individuals in the community to be able to, just impact the crime that we're seeing. The police, I always say that we can only do so much to impact that. We really do need a community component of individuals who know who those offenders are, who have a rapport with them, and be able to talk to those to prevent the crime from happening in the first place. When we see 14 and 15-year-olds committing crimes, we have to have groups of people who can really connect with them and be able to turn that around and to prevent them from going into a life of crime.
Chief, and any interest in any like third-party help, like from ShotSpotter, like Durham did? Could you speak to that at all?
That is not currently a technology that we are looking at here in Raleigh. I will tell you, just from where I stand, I would prefer those crime reduction that prevents crime in the first place. ShotSpotter is something that I think is a great tool for those communities that need it, but I would rather make the investments in areas where we can prevent crime from occurring in the first place.
In terms of the Hedingham shooting, is there any information you can share about how the suspect was able to access the weapon and charges maybe coming against the parents? I know you mentioned the importance of securing firearms and youth getting access to weapons. At this point, what, if anything, are you able to share about that?
I do not have any information at this time that I can share. That is an ongoing investigation that is occurring.
So there have been no charges or at this point, or no plan to have charges against the parents?
I can't speak to whether there's any plans for charges, but there have not been any at this time.
With respect to the Hedingham shooting, the two officers who fired the weapons, have they returned to work?
They have been cleared and returned to work,
And
yes.
can you just speak to where we are in that investigation? Have you completed your investigation and turned that over to the district attorney's office?
The investigation is nearly complete. We roundtable with the DA's office almost on a daily basis. And Deputy Chief Osterhout has been working very closely with that. So it is ongoing. Once everything is complete, though, we will get that fully to the DA's
So
office.
it's still open within your office?
It is.
If I could just mention the robbery from persons, it's a pretty significant decrease of 25%. This is in the fourth quarter, of course. I know you're analyzing year-over-year numbers. Is it that significant, 25% year-over-year, do you believe? I know that in the fourth quarter, we did very well. I'm just kind of wondering, are we seeing a crazy decrease in robberies from people?
We have seen just really a trend in the last couple of years of a decrease in robberies from persons. Of course, I don't have the exact number for 2022 yet. We will get that. But just the trends that we have been seeing, there has been a decrease from personal robberies.
Last question.
2% of juveniles with firearms for the aggravated assaults. Is 11% an unusual number? And if so, why does that happen?
We're seeing it's trending up, which is very disturbing. It just means now that we have more of our youth that are in possession of firearms. We saw, the very disturbing tragedy that happened in Virginia just recently. It just goes, again, to show us that we've got to be more intentional about making sure that firearms are not accessible to young people, that we're securing them and they're not in locations where they can get to them easily.
Thank you, everyone. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
As the chief said, there'll be an opportunity later on in the month to address additional issues. We thank you for coming today. We hope to see you at the next conference. Thank you, everyone.